So I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction. Marshall is actually from Greensboro, North Carolina, and he received his BA in studio arts from Elon University in 2010 and his MFA in painting from the University of California, Santa Barbara. So he's been all over. He also taught in Hawaii, which I'm kind of interested to hear about. I would love to. I've never visited Hawaii. And then as well as in Utah. So he's been kind of around all over the country, which is pretty exciting. He currently teaches painting and drawing courses at Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville. And he's a visiting assistant professor of art. And his creative work focuses on ancestry, identity, and transience. So welcome.
Well, thank you for organizing this show, Lisa. I'm just honored to be included with these other 6 artists, and I'm really looking forward to the reception tonight. So again, my name is Marshall Sharpe. I'm just going to go over some brief kind of biographical information. Like Lisa said, I did my BA from Elon University. I did a Master's of Teaching from the Chaminade University of Honolulu, and then my MFA at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And now I'm a visiting professor at Southern Illinois University. And I'd love it if any of you ever came down. We have a beautiful gallery there and a lot of great classes. Today, I'm going to be talking about 3 different bodies of work. My Hawaii work, which was kind of all of the work that I was creating before this ancestry work and that led up to it. Then I'll be talking about the ancestry work that is included in this Family Ties exhibition. And then I'll be talking a little bit about my current and future trajectory. I'll also end with some student work so that you can see how this presentation might apply to you and how you could engage in some of these art practices if you're interested. I'll start with the work I created in Hawaii. So 4 days after I graduated from Elon University, I got on a plane and flew straight to Hawaii. I was going there through a Teach for America program, and I was there for 7 years. I was teaching middle school English. I really loved my time there, and I started creating a series of paintings based off of my dives under the ocean. So I started this new sport or hobby called free diving. I'm diving down beneath the ocean without any scuba gear. And if you look in this image, I don't know if you can see it up here, but if you look in this image, you can kind of see a figure right here. Do you all see that? Yeah, it's kind of hard to see in this projection, but anyways, I'm maybe 40 or 50 feet down below the ocean. And this is what I'm seeing when I'm down there. Let's see if I can go to the next slide. Thank you. So I'm looking at all of this coral reef, and over the 7 years that I was there, I was kind of shocked by how quickly the coral was dying. When coral dies, it turns bleached white. It's kind of beautiful, looks like bone, but it's really sad because of climate change and the warming of the oceans. It's dying very quickly. So I wanted to make work about that process that I was witnessing. I started by creating abstract paintings like this one, and I was trying to find ways that the paint could represent fragility and kind of the degradation of the environment. This work was heavily influenced by my mentor, Reem Bassoos. I took a class with her at the University of Hawaii in Manoa. It was a summer painting marathon. I was painting for 6 hours a day, every day for 3 weeks. It was very intense. She is a survivor of the Lebanese Civil War. She grew up in Beirut. And after the Lebanese Civil War, she's now in Hawaii, where she's an instructor of art at Leeward Community College. You can see these kind of scraping marks that she's creating on the painting are very similar to the scraping marks that I was creating. And this was also influenced by an artist named Gerhard Richter. In this particular painting, Bassoos is creating kind of an image, a memory of the stairs that she would run down as a girl to their bomb shelter. So there would be bomb raids in Beirut, and she and her family would run down those stairs. This is one of my favorite fish that I discovered in Hawaii. It has the longest name of any fish in Hawaii. It's called the lau wili wili nuku nuku oi oi. And I'm using these really bright colors. I'm interested in texture. And also I'm kind of using watered acrylic paint to create these drips along the back to try to reference the way that this fish is kind of slowly melting, slowly disappearing. I was also using line work here to show these 5 damselfish, and then 4 additional ones drawn in line to show what might have been possible before climate change and what's possible now because there's so fewer fish. This painting is also phosphorescent, so in the dark it looks like this. And I loved the phosphorescence. It was really difficult to work with, very challenging, but a fun challenge. And I liked it because when you turn the lights off, the painting kind of glows bright green and then slowly fades to black. And I felt like that was a nice allegory for what I was seeing in the ocean, where you see these beautiful coral reefs, and then slowly over the years, they just fade to nothing. The phosphorescent work was influenced by Linda Benglis. This is Linda Benglis painting in 1969. She's using 40 gallons of latex paint at the University of Rhode Island. This image down here is an image of her today. And Linda Benglis creates these gorgeous pour paintings. This is an example. I've seen one of these in person, and I love the materiality of it, the physicality of it. It makes me think about painting, but it's also sculpture at the same time. And I'm interested in kind of the ways that paint can melt like this and almost look like a melted ice cream cone. Benglis also creates these beautiful kind of phosphorescent poured sculptures. And this was the work that specifically inspired me or that I was interested in when I started painting with phosphorescence. This is what her work looks like during the day, and then this is an example of what it looks like at night. Here I am in my studio painting in Hawaii. I was working on this large coral reef scene at the time, and I was really excited by some of the mark making that I was beginning to discover and the complexity of the color. And this is also a phosphorescent painting, so it looks like this in the daytime, and then at night it starts kind of glowing, and then it slowly fades down to this kind of green color. Here's some other examples of the work, very textured. So again, you can see that kind of physical nature of the paint. I'm not trying to really blend my brushstrokes and hide the fact that it's a painting. I'm trying to reveal the fact that it's a painting and remind the viewer at every moment that there's a texture to this surface. I also tried these kind of scrape paintings. The one on the right is my mentor's work, Reem Basus. The one on the left is mine. You can see hers is a lot more sophisticated. But that was one of the methods that I tried to learn new approaches to painting, is I would look at what my mentors were doing and then I would try to emulate it in some way. This is my studio in Hawaii. I rented this huge warehouse space. I was paying $600 a month for this studio, which is a lot of money. In Hawaii, everyone was shocked. They couldn't believe how cheap it was, but still, it was a lot of money. And I was teaching special education English to 8th grade students. I was working full time, and so I'd get to school at 7:30. I would teach until 4. I had meetings after school, and then I would go to this studio and paint from maybe 4 to 7. Paint, and then go home and make dinner for me and my boyfriend. And then it was, repeating it all over the next day. So after I took that class with Reem Basus at the University of Hawaii, she really encouraged me to pursue grad school. And I said, what does that mean? What do you do in grad school anyways? And she said, you will love it. It'll be the best time of your life. It's 2 to 3 years where all you're doing is just focusing on your art practice. You're painting all of the time. You're surrounded by other artists that are just as serious as you are. And it will be the best time of your life. And so I said, okay, well, how do I, get into grad school? And she said, well, you need to start by creating a series of 40 paintings, and then we'll have a meeting and we'll select the best 20. And that 20 paintings will be your portfolio. And then you'll have to write an essay about the theme and kind of the connection between the work, and that will be your application. So that was all of this phosphorescent painting that I was creating, these 40 pieces. So I went to my meeting with her at the end of that time, and I'd gotten everything ready. I had the paintings finished. I'd written my essays. I'd even started applications online to about 10 schools. And I said, okay, Reem, what do you think? And at that point, all I really needed was her letter of recommendation. Reem said, well, the work is beautiful, but it looks very commercial. It looks like the kind of work that you would see in a commercial art gallery, not necessarily a fine art gallery. It looks like the kind of work that people might buy to hang over their couch in their home, but it's not very conceptually interesting. The material isn't really matching the concept in a very convincing way, and it's just not working. And I was devastated. I'd worked for a year, I'd spent a lot of money, a lot of time, and effort to create this, and I just couldn't believe it, that none of it was going to work. And she said, well, what are your other ideas? And I told her one of my other ideas was to do some research about my grandmother, Nancy Morgan, who passed away from breast cancer before I was born. And I was always curious about her because she was like this big secret in my family. My mom never talked about her. My dad never talked about her. We didn't really have many images of her in the home. And yet she loved art, and she traveled around the world and had this beautiful collection of antique furniture and carpets from the Middle East and Japanese silkscreen prints. And she passed all of that down to our family. So I grew up with a lot of fine art in our home. And I loved it. I think that kind of spurred my appreciation and love for fine art in general. So I wanted to know more about her. She grew up in Memphis during the height of the civil rights movement. And I felt like there was something there for me to discover. So I told Reem about this, and Reem said, oh, this is great. This is so interesting. I think you should absolutely pursue this. And what you need to do is take a year off from teaching, and you need to paint every day, all day, for a year to develop a body of work about your grandmother. And then we'll have another meeting, and we'll see how it turns out. And I thought, how am I going to afford this? I can't just take a year off of work. But I found a way to do it. I applied for a year-long sabbatical from my school. At that point, I had just finished teaching 7 years. It was a competitive process. I had to write a proposal, and there was many other people that wrote proposals that year as well. But somehow I was selected for this sabbatical. And a sabbatical for teaching at that time meant they would pay me half of my salary for a year. I would go and do this research, and then I would return later and kind of bring back the learning into the classroom. So with the sabbatical, I moved home to North Carolina. It wasn't really enough money to live in Hawaii anymore. So I moved home to live with my dad's mom. She's also a painter. I lived with her for the year, and I started interviewing family and friends and trying to collect photographs as source material for this body of work. I was very influenced and interested by these two artists, Cheryl Dunye and Zoe Leonard. Cheryl Dunye is a filmmaker, Zoe Leonard's a photographer, and they collaborated on this project called the Faye Richards Archive. Cheryl Dunye was kind of watching these antebellum films, and she found this beautiful film that had this Black actress in it, and she was just this gorgeous Black actress, and she wanted to learn more about her. So she started searching through archives, trying to find out who was this actress, what were the details of her life, where was she born, what films was she in, and she couldn't find anything. And she kind of had this hunch that this Black woman might be a lesbian. And she's a lesbian, so Leonard is lesbian, and they both felt like they couldn't find any images of lesbian Black women in any of the archives. Of course, they existed, but where were the images of them? So they got together and they said, you know what? We can't find any images in the archive, so we're going to create our own. So they hired this Black woman who you're seeing right here, and they staged her in all of these photos. They bought these clothes to make her look like she was from the 1940s. They bought cameras and film to make it look like it was all from that era. And they created this entire archive of images in which she's kind of this glamorous Hollywood actress. And the whole story of her life was kind of made up. So they couldn't find any details about her life. So instead, they created this archive of what might have been, what her life might have looked like. And the collection is now it's now owned by the Whitney Museum in New York City. I got to see it in person at MoCA, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles. And it had a big impact on me. When I saw it, I thought, wow, look at this incredible person's life. And I'm looking through all of these images and seeing these different films where she's playing this actress. And I thought, this is really powerful. And then I came to discover it was all made up. It was a fake archive. And I thought that was such an interesting way of making work. You know, here's an image of her. Maybe she's in a film, or maybe she's just relaxing with friends. They also created this narrative of her love life as this Black lesbian woman from the 40s. And, you know, they couldn't find the truth of her life, so they just made it up. And I loved that idea of using your creativity to create a fake archive to fill in a void where you can't find out what the truth really was. Not a future archaeologist, just a painter. The work was also influenced by Cindy Sherman. Cindy Sherman is this iconic feminist photographer. And in this image, she calls it Untitled Film Still. And it's feminist because she's not letting a man represent her. A man's not taking this photo. A man's not doing the makeup. A man isn't doing the film direction or the clothes. Instead, she's taking entire control of the process. She's choosing the clothes. She's doing the makeup. She's positioning the camera. And she's positioning the camera down below where she's standing. The camera's looking up, and it's making her look like a powerful woman. And I love that idea of kind of taking control of the way that an individual is represented. So these influences helped me to create my own archive. The way I started it is I would come across images like this that were in a cardboard box in my mom's attic, for example. And I would go to my mom and I would say, okay, you know, who are these women? And my mom would say, well, this is your grandmother right here. And then these are her friends, your grandmother's in the stripes. And I said, okay, well, you know, what's the context around this image? And my mom honestly didn't know, you know, she didn't know where she was. And so I made up an entire story around this photograph because I wanted to build a relationship with this woman that I'd never met. And I couldn't find out the truth about her life. So I decided to make up a fake archive of what her life was like. This particular image was really powerful to me because I'd always kind of anticipated this rejection from my grandmother. And I've always wondered, you know, if she was alive today, how would she feel about me being a gay man? And I just felt confident that she was born in, you know, the late 20s, early 30s. She would not have been okay with it. She probably would have cut me off and not spoken to me. And that was very painful to kind of internalize that rejection. Well, through this interview process, learning more about her family and friends, I came to discover that one of her best friends was this woman named Adele. And they lived together in Memphis. They had an apartment together in their late 20s. And Adele was a lesbian. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe that one of my grandmother's best friends was gay. And it was so powerful to me. It gave this huge sense of warmth and healing into my life because I realized that if my grandmother was alive today, she would have loved me and accepted me and been totally excited to be in relationship with me. So I named this painting, My Best Friend is a Lesbian. And I made up this story of my grandmother being on this transatlantic cruise to Europe. I know that she did take this cruise because I have her travel journals from the time. And I pretended that this woman here is Adele, and they're planning to go out to a fancy dinner that evening. They've all got these beautiful dresses on, but they were driving by the beach. They're in France, and they see the ocean. They say, oh, let's just go in the water. Let's just stick our toes in. And they walk out into the sand, and then this wave comes and kind of crashes behind them. And Adele starts to fall over, and she's screaming, and everybody's laughing. And, you know, later they went out for cocktails and dinner. Well, is that story really true? No. You know, did any of that happen? Probably not. I don't know if it happened or not, but I made up this story as a way of helping me to form a relationship with this woman and give me that sense of kind of closeness and intimacy that I lacked. From this image, I created a series of oil paintings. There was about 40 oil and canvas paintings. And I was using these really thick, kind of unblended brush strokes like this one down here. And that was influenced by the work of Rebecca Campbell. This is a painting by Campbell. She's an art professor at UC Fullerton, and I love her work. This is one of my favorite paintings of all time. And I love that Campbell is using these brush strokes that are not hiding the fact this is a painting. She's not blending them. She's showing you the individual hairs of the brush and the way that they're creating these incredible marks. So I wanted to do the same thing. That's why I was creating this type of work. But in the end, I felt like this was too close to the photograph. You know, why paint a photograph? I could just print the photo and use that for a gallery exhibition or an art practice. Why did it need to be a painting? And this wasn't far enough. It wasn't convincing enough. So I wanted to incorporate some abstraction into that. And this was the process that I started experimenting with. I would take the oil painting, put it on the ground, and then kind of, actually, I think I have a video. Let me see if this will work. Okay, so this is the oil painting right here that I've done. And now I'm watered down additional oil paint with turpentine, and I'm painting over the image with these really liquid strokes. And then I'm dripping isopropyl alcohol into it, rubbing alcohol to create these concentric circles. And you can see over here in the top that this is a piece of paper. This is kind of my guide. So I photographed this painting. I took it to FedEx. I printed 10 copies. I experimented on these 10 copies. And then I came up with this particular design that I really liked. And now I'm copying that design on the actual painting. I got this idea from a different mentor, Ann Simpkins at Elon University. Let me kind of skim through this so you can see the whole process. So here I am dripping the isopropyl alcohol into it. You can see the concentric circles that are forming. And then this is the final product right here. So I showed Ann Simpkins this work, and she said, you know, it's beautiful, but the mark making doesn't really have any meaning here. It's not exactly working. And she said, I can tell that this painting is very precious to you. You don't want to destroy it. It's still important for you to be able to see your grandmother's face. You're being too cautious. You're not taking big enough risks. And you need to try something else. I said, okay, well, what should I do? And she was the one that said, go to FedEx and print out 10 copies of this painting and then destroy them, tear into them, scribble on them, get out some crayons, pour paint on them, whatever you need to do, whatever risks you need to take to manipulate this image. That's how you're going to get something really interesting. So I took her advice and I started creating. That year, I created 250 of these paintings on paper, and I was just printing out paper after paper from FedEx and then coming home and kind of pouring paint on top of them. And it was a really exciting time. I was just churning out these paintings, and because I wasn't being so cautious, I was able to take larger risks, and eventually I had a breakthrough in my practice. This is an example of I order these deli food storage containers from Amazon. That's what I store my paints in. And this is a video. Let's see if I can. This is kind of a video of my process. So I have all of these containers of acrylic paint mixed with water, and I have these pipettes in them. I'm kind of mixing it up, and then I'm drawing on the painting as if it was like a quill pen or something. Here's a second video, I think. Okay, yeah. So you can see how I'm kind of drawing on this photograph. I've taken an image of a painting that I've already done, printed it out at FedEx. I've glued it onto a piece of canvas, and now I'm painting over it with this watered down acrylic paint. Let's skip that one. This is the effect that I came up with this new kind of breakthrough in my practice. And I loved this style, this approach. And I felt like it was really successful because there's multiple layers here. You know, you saw the photo that I started with, then you saw the oil on canvas painting, and you can still see these kind of brush marks of the oil on canvas in the background. Then I've photographed the oil on canvas painting, printed that out again, and painted over it with this watered down acrylic paint. And as I'm painting kind of on the floor, the watered down acrylic paint is starting to mix together. It's creating these swirls. I can't fully control it. And I kind of liked that because I felt like the paint was having this autonomy. It was beginning to do things I couldn't control, couldn't fully understand. And I felt like the paint and I were collaborating to create these images. I also liked the kind of meta nature of this, where it was a painting, then a photograph, then a painting, then a photograph, then a painting, because I felt like there was these multiple layers where I was removed from my grandmother. I didn't really know who she was, and so I was learning who she was from these artifacts and stories about stories, secondhand, third hand. So I felt like my process was kind of representing my concept. I also liked that the liquid nature of the paint was referencing memory. And memory it's very fluid. It changes. We think that our memories are really solid, and we think about memory often as being like a computer. You go into the computer, you double click the file, you open it up, there it is. But that's not really how our brains work. When we remember something from the past, our brains are actually reconstructing that memory from scratch. And it can be influenced, it can be changed over time. It can especially be influenced by photos or stories or videos that you watch. And so the things you think you've remembered the best, that you remember the most times, your brain is actually reconstructed the most number of times, and it has the most potential for flaws. And I liked that that was kind of being represented here with the paint. This is another version I did, much larger. This is 60 by 80. And again, I printed this out and kind of taken it, glued it onto a piece of canvas, and then I painted on it with this watery acrylic paint and also gold leaf. I really loved this style, this approach. I wish that I'd left it like this, but I kept going, I kept experimenting, and this is what the painting looks like today. So I've almost completely destroyed it. But it's okay, I can go back, I can pull back those figures that once existed there. And this process is really fun because I'm pouring paint onto the canvas, and then I'm blowing it across the canvas with a leaf blower. And I'm blowing the paint at like 120 miles per hour. It's a hot mess, but I'm really enjoying this abstraction process. I think I have an example of it here. Let's see. So these are these kind of very metallic paints that I'm using. They're kind of unstable. They're very translucent, so you have to use multiple layers to get any kind of opacity. I'm mixing water in. I'm using my pipettes to kind of measure 5 millimeters, 10 millimeters of water. And then I'm shaking it up in these deli food storage containers to mix the paint and the water together. Here I'm pouring it onto a piece of paper, and now I'm using that leaf blower to kind of blow it across the surface of the canvas. I was really excited by the types of marks that I was able to make with this leaf blower. And I felt like there were marks that I'd never seen before in other people's paintings. And that's always a goal for me in my artwork, is how can I create a mark that nobody has ever seen before? I have some other examples I want to show you. So this is one of the kind of marks or the moments that I really love. And you're seeing, this is, a piece of paper that's been glued onto a canvas. It has all these wrinkles in the paper. It's been painted with the silver paint. You're seeing gold leaf over here, and then blue, kind of transparent blue, has been painted on top of it. And so I like these kind of multiple layers that I'm slowly building up. Here's another example of a mark that I really liked. And this is influenced by an artist named Janet Sobel. This is her painting Milky Way from 1945. Janet Sobel was an outsider artist. She didn't go to art school, so she didn't really have an art education. She would just paint in her kitchen at home. She would paint a kind of small scale. This painting is only about this big. And she would use a blow dryer, a hair dryer, to blow the paint across the surface. And Jackson Pollock actually went and visited her studio with Clement Greenberg. And later, Jackson Pollock admitted that she was the inspiration for his pour paintings. And I thought it was a really interesting story that I'd never heard before. It's kind of a sad story of a white man kind of taking credit for a white woman's work and getting all of the money and fame, and then she gets nothing. Janet Sobel kind of died in obscurity. No one really knew who she was, while Jackson Pollock is like selling his paintings for millions of dollars because he's being really funded by Peggy Guggenheim. In any case, I included this slide here because I wanted to show you that Jackson Pollock really missed something. Janet Sobel has this incredible way of making these swirling marks that are blown across the surface of the canvas. Her color harmony is gorgeous. I think her paintings are a lot better than Pollock's. I think he missed something. And so I'm going back to her process with the blow dryer and trying to repeat it at a larger scale. And I'm also including this slide because I want to give credit to Janet Sobel in a way that I didn't feel like Jackson Pollock did. This is one of my favorite paintings in the series. I call this the Gardens of Versailles. I'm pretending that my grandmother was in Paris. I know that she did take a trip to France, but I don't really know if she went to the Gardens of Versailles. So the paint is kind of swirling around. You can barely see this figure standing here. This is her face staring at the viewer, her high-heeled shoes. This might be a rose garden in the background and kind of trees melting into the sky. And it's kind of liquid and moving the way that memories are kind of fluid. I'm going to be talking in more detail about this work tonight. And so I'm just going to kind of flip through some of these images. This will be a preview of the work that's in the show, Family Ties. And then come back to the gallery tonight to hear some more details. I often create multiple versions of my paintings. So I've probably repainted this image 15 times. And I just do it over and over and over because each time I do it, I'm able to break free from the process I did before and create something new. This is at a large scale. This is about the size of a queen-size mattress. Some of the marks that I'm making on that canvas. Another example of my process, starting with a photo, going to an oil painting, then abstraction on top of the oil painting, and now another photo of the oil painting that I printed out and painted on top of. Most of these works are in the show. I'm showing you about 20 pieces right now. 13 of them are in the show at the Gertz Gallery. So a few of these are not in the show that you all are getting to see today. This is my grandmother again. All of those images are images from her life. And I've kind of attached memories or stories to each one. This is one that you're seeing in a lot of the advertisements around campus. Okay, I'm going to move on and talk about some of my current practice and the work that I'm thinking about creating in the future. So this is a piece that I've just created recently. I'm really excited about it. This is a spinal cord right here. These are ribs. And then this is a collarbone right here. And this is based on this X-ray image of my own body. About 2 years ago, I was in a skiing accident and I broke my collarbone. And I kept waiting for my collarbone to heal. I thought it was going to take 6 weeks, and then 6 months passed, and then 2 years passed. It never really healed. This is what my collarbone looks like today. So this is my clavicle right here. This should be one solid bone, and it's broken right there. And it never came back together. The two bones are still separated, and I just have this fibrous scar tissue that's kind of holding them together. I kept waiting for my body to get back to normal so that I could get back to the skiing and the rock climbing and the swimming and all the things that I love to do. And it just never happened. Even today, I can kind of feel tension in the muscles and tendons. And I felt like it was an allegory for what we've all experienced during COVID. You know, I keep waiting for COVID to be over so I can get back to my old life, my normal life. And only now am I beginning to realize that that's not going to happen. This is the new normal. You know, we're probably going to get a booster or a new vaccine every October for the rest of our lives. COVID's never going to go away. We're just going to have to learn how to live with it. We're going to be continuing to wear masks, and this is the new normal. And so I'm trying to get used to that, but I'm also grieving some of the things that we've lost in the process. That's part of the reason that I'm using this blue color, is because I think blue kind of references this longing feeling, this nostalgia for a time gone by. I also like the way that this watery acrylic paint is kind of swirling around and referencing the fluidity of identity. I'm so sorry, my alarm just keeps going off. Our identity is based on the stories that we tell ourselves. We tell ourselves, oh, I'm an athlete, I'm a gay man, I'm an artist. But these are all identities that are kind of fictionalized, and we create these narratives around who we are that we tell other people to try to explain ourselves to the world. And we get by with the stories that can't be verified by other people. Those are the stories that kind of endure. So over the past 5 years, I have moved between 5 states and 5 different time zones. I've lived in Hawaii, North Carolina, California, Utah, and now Missouri. And the process has been really wild. Every time I move, I have to make new friends. I have to find a new gym, go to a new grocery store, find a new apartment. And every time I do that, there's this chance to kind of reinvent myself and ask myself, who am I? That's part of the reason I like to go back to my ancestry. Is learning more about my ancestry helps me to feel rooted and grounded in this very transient world. And it's also the reason I keep going back to using my body in my current work. Is no matter where I go, that's the one thing that stays the same, or the one thing I carry with me everywhere is my body. Again, you can see kind of the broken collarbone here, this kind of moment of impact in blue. This swirling, this is a swirling kind of self-portrait. This is one of my favorite paintings I've created this year. Here I'm using kind of a self-portrait of me with a black eye to represent the ways that sometimes the world just, it just hits you, sometimes it hurts you, it beats you down, and it kind of tries to steal who you are and who you believe you can be. And so I'm trying to use the analogy of a black eye to create this piece. This is one of my favorite marks in the whole piece. It exists right here in the hair. And I feel like it's a mark that I haven't seen in other types of painting before. So it's something I'm excited about in my experiments. I've also started working with cyanotypes. Cyanotypes are an old form of photography from the 1800s. You use a paintbrush to paint photosensitive liquid onto a piece of paper and then develop it. So this is a cyanotype based on that painting you just saw. This is an image of me, kind of my nude body in the fetal position in Joshua Tree. I'm often using my nude body to try to reference feelings of vulnerability and isolation, which I think is something we can all relate to after these past few years of quarantine and COVID. This is an unfinished piece, just work in progress. This is an image of me kind of lying on top of this bed of moss on top of a volcano in Hawaii. And it has a really cool story, but I'm going to skip over it for now. This is a detail shot. You can see that I'm very attracted to very graphic painting. I'm not necessarily blending these values together. I'm leaving them rendered. And I like that kind of graphic quality. But I didn't feel like this painting went far enough. And so this is the state that it's currently in. And I'm really excited about this. I had a dream one time about this nude man that was kind of melting into the earth, into the sky, and I've been trying to recreate that dream ever since. So I like that this figure's skin is kind of melting into the moss down here, melting into the background, and also the background is melting into him. I like that kind of two-dimensional change in the image. Another example in the fetal position. And then this is what the painting looks like today. So I often feel that to get a really good painting, I have to be willing to completely destroy what I've made in order to create something new. And this is the process. This is in the destruction phase right now. And then I'll slowly bring back the representation, the realism, the body, the background, the grass, etc.
Hear about that show that pharmaceutical made where you can make $1 million picture by taking a photo by applying a liquefy filter?
No, I haven't heard of that. I do love the liquefy filter, and I play with it a lot in Photoshop. It's such an interesting way of kind of changing an image before you maybe work with it in a painting. You saw this one early. This is also a cyanotype. And then this is a new body of work that I'm thinking about creating. This is me with 10,000 bees on my body. It's called a bee beard. This is a rite of passage for beekeepers. I started beekeeping in middle school. I continued through high school. When I was in Hawaii, I started a beekeeping club in Hawaii, got some funding and wrote a grant. And what's happening here is I've taken one single queen bee, I put her in a tiny cage, put the cage in a necklace, and the necklace is hanging around my neck, and the queen bee is kind of close to my heart. And she releases this smell that tells all of her hive, hey, I'm over here, come over here and protect me. And all 10,000 bees from her hive fly onto my body and surround her to protect her. And beekeepers have been doing this for ages as a way of showing people the peaceful nature of bees and the way that they can be very gentle and they just want to protect their queen. But it's also a very precarious, scary moment because the bees are on the verge of life and death. If that one queen dies or accidentally gets squished, the entire hive will die because they don't have enough time to create a new queen bee. At the same time, if all the bees get upset and sting me at the same time, they could kill me. 20, 30 stings isn't going to kill you, but 10,000 stings at the same time could definitely kill you. So me and the bees are both right on that knife edge between life and death, and we're dependent on each other. The bees are depending on me to be gentle and kind to them. I'm depending on them to be gentle and kind to me. No, these bees are real bees. And I'm thinking about creating a series of paintings. I've already started some of these paintings, but I want this to be kind of a larger series. So this is a cyanotype. This is also a cyanotype based on a painting that I'm working on, and then more cyanotypes. I'm going to conclude my talk by just sharing some student work with you. Each year in my advanced painting class, I teach students how to take photographs of their family, their ancestors, and then turn them into paintings. And they basically bring in multiple copies of photos. They print them out on 8x10 computer paper. And then we mix up the paint in class together and we use those pipettes to paint on top of them. And so all of the work you're about to see is student work. And I wanted to show this to you because this is something that anybody can do at home, in their kitchen, in their bedroom, in their living room, wherever you like to work. And I think it's a really smart way of working because you can create your own narrative if you want to. You can create your own archive. Even if you're adopted and you don't know who your family is, you could create a fake archive about your chosen family. Or maybe you could create an archive about what it's like to live in Champaign or what it's like to attend this university. All of us are kind of saturated by images that come out of Hollywood, LA, New York, and I myself have never seen images or paintings of what it's like to live in Champaign, and that would be very interesting to me. I had a student last year that started creating these images of her parents with all this corn in the background, and she told me, my parents, my grandparents, they're corn farmers. And I said, oh my gosh, Michaela, that is fascinating. I said, you've got to do a whole series about this. I love that. And she said, what are you talking about? And I said, Michaela, I have lived in North Carolina, New Jersey, Utah, Missouri, California, Hawaii. I have never met anybody that was a corn farmer in my whole life. And she said, Marshall, everybody I know is a corn farmer. All of my friends are corn farmers. All their parents are corn farmers. And I said, that is so fascinating to me. And I said, you've got to create a whole body of work about this and then take that work other places. People in New York and California and Chicago, they're going to be really fascinated to see this work. And she just looked at me like I was an alien. And I kind of looked at her like, wow, you've lived such an interesting life. So the things that we think are really boring about our lives, other people might find really interesting, especially people that live in other places. Okay, let's look at some of the student work. A lot of this work is coming out of Utah, but it's also work that my students at Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville have created. Sometimes the work is just completely abstract, like this is an example. You can't really tell what's going on here. And I like that. Sometimes it's interesting to see a fully abstract painting. This is one of my favorites. This student was a little girl and her mom had like curled her hair into this huge kind of mound of hair and then sat her in front of a mirror so that you could see all the work she put into the curls from the back and the front. Took this photo of her and then she's recreated it in a painting. She did over 10 of these paintings in class. This is, I thought, one of the best ones. And I loved the way that it referenced memory and the ways that memories change and are kind of fluid over time. I also kind of like it when the photo comes through. You can see the photographic aspects of these little boys, their eyes, you can see the fence, but then the rest of the image kind of dissolves into paint. I love that. Some people might think it's cheating to paint over photographs. I don't think so. I don't think that there's necessarily a wrong or right way to make art. I think it's just important to continue making art, to continue experimenting and taking risks and pushing yourself. This one's really large. This is 60 by 80. So one of my final projects in my advanced classes, I have students work in teams and collaborate on these massive paintings that are the size of a queen mattress. And it's really fun to see what they come up with. This is kind of the mark making that they're achieving. This one is also the size of a queen mattress.
You saw about painting on actual queen mattress?
That's a good idea. I wouldn't be the first. There's a lot of people that have painted on actual mattresses or used them in installations in galleries. Here's a better example. You can see the scale here compared to this little chair. As I'm looking at these images, I'm thinking about all the stories. Some of them I can remember, and some of them my imagination is just making up. So today I talked to you all about my Hawaii work, the work I was creating before the ancestry work, and kind of the failure of that. I talked to you about the work I created around my ancestry that's included in the Family Ties exhibition. I talked to you about my current future work and then showed you some examples that my students are creating. So these are some of the images that will be in the Family Ties exhibition tonight. I hope that you'll come back to the gallery. I think the reception starts at 5:30, and I'll be giving an artist talk about these individual paintings at 6:15 and sharing some of the stories that I've attached to those. Okay, thank you so much for your attention today. I really appreciate it.